10%. That is what a professional punter, after a full year of form work, would be delighted with. And I reckon I know what you were thinking, because I have thought it myself. All those Saturdays, all those hours over the form for 10%? Not worth all the time. Hold that thought, because a bloke called Rick thought exactly the same. And Rick is not a punter at all. He runs a business. This is Roman Kozlovski, writing in Practical Punting, and the piece is called It's a Serious Business. By the end of it, you will know what a bank of $1,000 actually does over 12 months, and which of Roman's 2 charts he wants you to aim at. It is not the big one. One quick thing before we dig in. There is a free companion guide to go with this video, carrying Roman's charts in full, month by month, every column. The link is in the description below. Grab it and you can follow along as we go. Most Thursday nights, after a long day in the trenches in my day job, and after about 3 hours of form work for the Perth races, I have the need to find something less pressure-packed to do. The relaxation I seek is to catch up with friends and their respective partners at a local venue where we partake in the fine art of sensible conversation, sprinkled with heaps of hearty laughter as we stir one another, discuss the affairs of the world, sporting issues, and then, to finish off the night, we even grace the dance floor with some good old-fashioned rock and roll dancing. I normally make small talk with non-punters about horse racing. I tend to get deeply involved in explaining the intricacies of the punt, to the point where I suspect most do not quite know what I am on about when I start rambling about racetrack percentages, just to mention one area. One evening, however, I became involved in a discussion with Rick, one of the regulars of the group, about punting on the horses that went a fraction beyond the norm. Rick will be the first to admit he is not a punter in any serious sense of the word when it comes to horse racing, greyhounds and harness racing, and his only interest outside of the Melbourne Cup will be to follow a tip he may get from a friend whose opinion or information he trusts. Rick, however, is a punter in another sense, because he runs a successful business, outfitting hotels and offices with furniture, carpets and fittings, and he expressly attempts to save the owners of the businesses the hard yards in finding appropriate furniture. Just like a serious horse racing punter, he must only venture into markets where he has the expertise to judge the right buying price. If he begins to buy furniture and fittings at the wrong price consistently, he would face a grim future. And it cuts both ways. If I were to begin betting on harness racing or greyhound racing, for example, at this moment in time, I would be venturing into an area where I have no current expertise, and I would surely make poor value decisions about buying bets at the right price. And I also would be up against the metaphorical wall, just like Rick. Now, here is the bit that started all of this. What interested me the most in my initial discussion with Rick was his perception of what he thought would constitute a successful horse racing punter in terms of profit. When I told Rick that most professional punters would be ecstatic with a yearly POT, profit on turnover, of 10%, and that most would be profiting closer to 5% than 10%, he was most surprised. And when I posed the question as to what he thought would have been the figure, he chose 20%. Rick, I guess, chose that figure because that is the ballpark he has to play in, and anything less than 20% would begin heralding the end of his business. In defense of the lowly perceived pot, I tried to point out that as a punter's bank grew, so would his bet size, hence his pocketed monies would increase. But he was not convinced and started to shake his head. At this point of the conversation, I felt it was time to ease out of the discussion. But as I drove home that night, I wondered about the best way to show Rick how a serious punter could actually increase his bank and bet size and become, what even he would consider, a successful punter. This article, I hope, is a step in that direction. So I sat down and did the sums. I set out by assuming a punter had the ability to make 10% POT every single month over a 12-month period, and I wondered what increase on the original bank there would be. Chart 1 shows the results. Obviously, seeking 10% POT every month is asking a fair bit, and perhaps 5% would be a more realistic figure to use. Chart B shows the results. After calculating the above figures, I caught up with Rick again and asked him, If you started a business with $100,000, what would you expect your profits to be at the end of 12 months? He replied that after all expenses were calculated, in the first year he would expect to break square. The second year he would expect around 15 to 18%, and the third year 35%, which means that after 3 years he has an extra $35,000 in his pocket, after all expenses, including paying himself a wage. When I showed Rick charts A and B, he was puzzled by the terminology and column figures, so he explained to me how he looks at business. Pause there a second. If this video has been worth your time so far, a like tells the thing to show it to somebody else like you, which is all I'd ask of you. New ones go out every day for now, weekly down the track, so subscribe and you'll not have to look. There's more confidence about this game than there is homework. I know which of the two I'd trust. Right you are. Where were we? Now, I must admit I knew zippo about the sort of percentages Rick needs to know in his business model. But I now know how he looks at two types of figures: markup, which is profit divided by cost, and margin, which is profit divided by total outlay. Markup is simply the percentage profit on any products he buys. So if he spent $1,000 on a business desk and sold it to a hotel or a business for $1,250, he has made $250 profit, or a 25% markup. A professional punter would look at this as a POT of 25%, because he also had an original cost, a bet, of $1,000, and has also received back $1,250. However, Rick explained he calculates his business figures via the margin model because, as he states, business equals margin because it includes overheads, all expenses. And thus, if it cost him $1,250 to buy and sell a business product, and his profit was the same as the markup example, $250, he would actually call this a margin of 20%. Which puts the real bar a bit higher than we usually admit. A professional punter would have to add all his expenses, form guides, databases, travel costs, to his outlay over the course of a year to arrive at the same conclusion as Rick. The business of punting equals margin. After Rick explained his terminology and I mine, he posed the $64,000 question. Can a punter actually make 10% or even 5% POT every single month? The answer, quite simply, is highly unlikely because there will be enormous swings, some months above and below the 5% or 10% figures I've calculated. So here is how the charts are built. Both Chart A and Chart B figures are calculated on the basis of a beginning bank of $1,000, with the bets each month equaling 5% of the new bank each month, with the outlay based on 30 bets per month for place betting, which these days is my preferred betting option. This always assumes we can bet 20 straight losers before busting our bank. For win punters, I would use 2% as the percentage, thus allowing 50 straight losers. Let's face it, if a place punter had 20 losers and a win punter 50 losers straight on form selections, they are in the wrong investment market. And now the number you have been waiting for. In Chart A, at 10%, the original bank of $1,000 has increased by 420%, while in the more sedate Chart B, at 5%, the original bank of $1,000 has increased by 121%. Chart B is the one I would ask you to target, as I believe by the end of the year, with all sorts of swings and roundabouts, even if only 2.5% POT is achieved and the bet number per week is reduced to 20 per month, the profit on your initial capital would be around 33%, which is still far better than bank interest. That one is Chart C. In this article, one have attempted to present the perspective of another type of punter, the businessman. And as it turns out, their world and ours, that of horse racing, are just separated by semantics, as we both use percentages, in slightly different ways, to quantify our success or failure. So, what does he want you to do with it? Study my wild 10% chart and more realistic 5% chart. Devise your own. Start with a bank dedicated to just betting. Increase the base bet as your bank increases and give it a go. You might surprise yourself as to what some good planning can achieve. And he put his own money where his mouth is. As a follow-up to the discussions with Rick, I intend to send him a monthly summary of my place bets, starting from July the 29th, which I shall log into a spreadsheet. All of the bets will be on either Betfair, betting companies, or TAB situations where printouts can be shown, and I shall base all figures on a bank of $1,000. At the end of 12 months, I shall report back to our good readers what Rick's comments have been as the months flitter by. Can I increase my initial bank by 25% or 50% or even over that big hurdle, 100%? Let us wait and see. In the horse race betting world, 12 months seems a very short space of time. As you read this in September, it was 10 months ago McKeeby Devil won the Melbourne Cup. So, that is the answer to Rick, and it is the answer to you. 10% was never the small figure he took it for. It just does its work quietly, month after month, on a bank that keeps getting bigger. And Roman would rather you aimed at the sensible chart than the wild one. I've put Roman's charts, all three of them, month by month, into a free guide to go with this video, so you can set your own bank alongside his and see where a year takes it. The link is just below this video. Keep it beside you when you next sit down with the form. And remember, never bet more than you can afford to lose. That's me for now. Look after yourself, take your time over the form this week, and I'll see you soon.